Hey team, and welcome. I'm your host, Carrie, creator of Mother Life, your destination for all things real talk and parenting. This is the IRL group chat, where we talk about the wild balancing act of pursuing careers and passions while also doing our best to show up for our kids. Join me every week as I sit down with some badass parents in my closet and we talk about their careers, kids, and relationships and all of the weird shit that comes up when you're trying to balance the seemingly impossible. Anxiety, an important evolutionary reaction to stress or danger. Got chased by a lion that one time in this part of the savannah? It might be smart to be anxious about it happening again when you're in the same area. You were late for school once and got a tardy on your otherwise perfect attendance report? Likely not fertile soil for anxiety in comparison, and yet it can still take hold like a nasty little virus. Anxiety gets a lot of airtime these days. Everyone's in therapy for it. We're all medicated for it. We're all talking about it ad nauseum. And I have to say, shock what? I've never been a terribly anxious person. I know that seems insane to say. Historically speaking, I haven't been an anxious person. I just kind of believe that I could pull myself up and out of situations, that there's nothing that couldn't be solved with a game plan. I didn't stew and worry all that much. Wild, right? Fast forward to me becoming a parent for the first time in the pandemic, trying to figure out how to hold on to myself and be a good parent to my kids, and knowing that somehow that involves a balance of showing up for them all of the time, but not doing everything for them, yada yada, and then, in comes my new pal, anxiety. I would still say anxiety and I are in sort of a casual, flirty relationship. She shows up, she takes me for a wild ride, and then she leaves as fast as she came. She hasn't fully moved in her stuff. She just comes around when the time is right and she trashes the place. And few things over this first chapter of parenthood have been more triggering for me than food. I love food. And for a girl raised in the 90s, I think I have a decent-ish relationship with it. This particular trigger isn't deeply rooted in a childhood story for me like it may be for many. It's something wholly formed as a consequence of a little complicated interloper called parasocial relationships with people on the internet when I was postpartum and emotionally vulnerable. Whew, mouthful. Anyway, today's episode was incredibly healing for me. It allowed me to untangle a lot of the noise in my own head, empathize with my kids in an area that was previously a black box to me, and it gave me a lot of confidence to trust my own instincts about what's best for them when it comes to food. Because anxiety is kind of like a bully, I think. Once you turn around and face it and call it out for not actually being that impressive, like, Jesus Christ, you're not even a real lion chasing me, I can slowly start to take its power away. Leading the charge today in support of this grand mission is my guest, Kelly Komisaruk. She's a feeding therapist with 2 decades of experience, and her practice, Food for Thought, specializes in ARFID, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, a condition that has gained increasing visibility in recent years. I hope you enjoy this episode. I'm sure you're going to have questions if you have a selective eater in your life, or if maybe you yourself are a selective eater. Obviously, feel free to reach out to Kelly. All of her information is in the show notes as always. Enjoy. Okay, so you broadly know what we do, right? We're going to talk about little Kelly and how you grew up and how you became this absolute expert badass in your field. And I'm going to ask you a million questions about kids and their eating and grown-ups and their eating too, honestly. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, so you're in Florida right now?
We're in Florida, yeah.
Did you grow up in Florida?
So no, I grew up in Michigan actually, and I've been here since about 2000. So I've been here for a long time. I always think that sounds like just a couple of years ago, but it's been over 20 years now.
I was born in Florida, and you've lived there longer than I did.
What part? Where were you?
Tampa.
Oh, that's where my daughter's going to college. She's going to USF.
Oh, nice.
University of South Florida, yeah. She's excited.
That's a great school.
Yeah.
What part of Florida are you in?
We're outside of Orlando.
Outside of Orlando. What does that look like?
Like trafficy. We're in like a suburb of Orlando, so it's very trafficy. I love the population I work with and everything, and the busyness in the field, but the traffic and everything, I'm like over it. I'm ready to not be in this type of area any longer.
It's pretty crazy. So, when I go back, which isn't that often, there's like whole neighborhoods that did not exist when I was growing up that like were farmland.
That's how, even in like 2016 when we moved here to this specific suburb, if you want to call it that, it was like farmland. There was hardly anything here, and now it's like, I mean, my son's going into first grade and there's 6 first grade classes. My daughter just graduated from high school and her graduating class was like 650. I mean, it's just insane. It's just crazy.
Now, I love that you already alluded to a large age gap.
I have a large age gap.
I love it. We're going to talk about it. There's always a story behind a large age gap.
There is.
And we'll get there. So you grew up in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
What's life like in Michigan growing up?
So cold, very cold. It was kind of there's beautiful parts of Michigan, but I was not in the most beautiful part. I was kind of more like central. But over the summers, we would go to the beautiful parts, and I've even taken my daughter back there. It's lovely if you've ever been in the summer. If people don't think of it, but it is a really, really beautiful place to be. And my husband grew up in Maine, so we've also gone like to kind of lakes and stuff up in Maine as well. So, I think neither of us missed the cold, but we kind of missed like everybody says, missed the seasons and stuff like that.
Were you growing up in like a suburban environment? Are kids out riding their bicycles?
Yes, and it's was very much kind of like here, very like kind of middle class, to affluent neighborhood community. But my family wasn't super affluent, but then the suburb I was in was, and so it was kind of an interesting perspective from that way as well.
Were your parents together when you were growing up?
They were, and they got divorced right before I graduated high school, and like literally right before. So the last couple months of my senior year, I lived like in a neighboring town, but still went to my old high school.
I feel like that's a popular timing. We were talking about this the other day.
I agree.
And it's like, you put in all of the elbow grease of like the hardest years of hands-on parenting. Yes. And then you're like, no, this isn't working. I'm out.
Yeah.
But in some ways, once you have kids out of the house, I imagine you actually don't need to see your partner that much if you don't want to.
Right. Well, it's interesting because the reason I have such a big age gap is because I was with my daughter's dad, and she turned like 1, and we'd already been married like 8 or 9 years because we waited a while to have her. And I was like, because I got married really, really young. I got married when I was like 21.
Child bride.
Yeah, like not smart decision. But I looked at her and I'm like, you're 1. I'm like, I don't know that I want to stick this out for the next 18 years with somebody he's a good guy. We just weren't right for each other. And I was like, I'm going to waste all these 18 years and then you're going to be graduating and I'm going to like not have a life or a partner that I want to spend time with after you leave. So that's when I pulled the trigger then, and we split up.
I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, and bravery, honestly.
And a lot of guilt associated with it. You feel, yeah, honestly, if you want me to be really,
I do want you
really
to be honest.
Yeah, I had to go to get help and counseling for just feeling not like a terrible mom almost for doing that to my daughter. But, in the end, I think she saw a better model of myself and she saw me happier, and it wouldn't have been a good situation for her had I stayed.
My parents got divorced when I was 2, and I don't remember them being together. So in some ways, I think it's much tidier.
Yeah, a little less messy. Like my sister split up when her son was like 9-ish or something, 10.
Messy.
And it was just so hard, much harder. Yeah.
Well, I love a woman who knows what she needs. So you're growing up in Michigan, you get married young.
Uh-huh.
Did you know what you wanted to do professionally when you were growing up? Like, were your parents both working?
My parents were both working.
Were they role models professionally at all for you?
Not really. It was more like, I don't want to struggle like they are, to be honest. They were making ends meet. I was never in need of something really, like food-wise or anything, but I just knew my mom was pretty open about stuff. We had a pretty close relationship. I mean, we still do, but like I knew it was a struggle. Like back to school shopping was stressful money-wise, and it was just a lot. And so I kind of didn't want to be be in that kind of sense, just not having to like be as paycheck to paycheck, even though they were making it work. So when I was in school, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like clueless. I mean, it was just, and I had somebody paying for 4 years of my college. So I wanted to take full advantage of that, and I wanted to like get something out of it. And so I was like, okay, I went to a school, it was called Central Michigan University, and they kind of like focus on education and stuff. They're kind of like a big, in the day, they were like a big teaching college, even though they're more like a university. But I took a like intro to teaching, and I was like, oh, this is not for me. But part of the teaching curriculum was like a communication sciences and disorders class. And then I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Like I got super interested in that. So that kind of led me down the speech pathology route.
What types of jobs did your parents have?
So my dad was in like sales. Actually, to be specific, this is a long time ago because I'm pretty old. So he sold like eyeglass frames.
Nice.
Yeah, to like retail shops or even like individual people. And then my mom, this sounds so funny when I say it, but she was an aerobics instructor.
Yes,
like,
Jane Fonda.
Yeah, she's very little and spunky, and like, you know, she kind of has that whole vibe. So she taught classes at night when my dad watched us, and she would be home with us more during the day when he was at work. And then she actually got a like part-time job at a retail like sporting goods store when I was a little bit more in my like middle school world.
Was fitness, was that like a big thing in your house?
Yes, big deal. It was. And my sister hated anything sports, but I was like the sporty one.
Are you older?
I'm the young one.
I'm the young one.
Yeah, I'm the young. She loves to read and chill at home. That's her favorite. And I'm like, you know, she knows what she loves.
Bless up, girl.
Yep. She never got into the whole team sports or any sport or any like. She
actually doesn't move.
She doesn't move. If she heard me say this, she'd probably be like, what are you saying? She's wonderful. But yeah, that she would say, she's like, honestly, like that's just not her jam.
Yeah.
So I was kind of the one that liked all that stuff.
My sister and I are a similar dynamic. Like she will if she must, but she doesn't really want to exercise.
No, that's exactly.
Do you identify as a youngest?
No, everything I did, then she kind of did after me. Like even though I got married young, then she got married. Then I'm like, I think I'm gonna have a baby. And then she got pregnant like a couple months later. And then I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is working like with my spouse. And she ended up, like everything I've done, she's ended up doing at some point just behind me. So it's really weird. It's almost like a flip.
Well, it's easier to do these things if you have somebody to follow.
Right, whether it's like a shitty thing or a fun thing, right? Yeah. You're like, okay, go through it. Yeah.
And so when you decide to go into a career of service, because that's really what it is when you're helping people, with speech pathology, was that something that your parents were like, cool, Kelly, like go for it?
Oh yeah, they were excited, and you have to have a master's degree to do that, and they're like big education people. Like that's why my college was paid for, because my grandparents were like, we're not going to pay for anything her whole life, but we'll pay for her college. Like, so just education was huge, and since you had to have like a master's, they were more excited about that, just knowing that I'd have like a lot of education. They were big, like there was no choice in my family if you went to college or not. It wasn't like an option, even though I believe there's lots of great fields and vocations and stuff you can do without going to college. That wasn't really an option.
And okay, so we've got proud parents. They're happy for you. What's the parenting vibe when you were growing up? What was the sort of style? Also, look at this fucking crazy hanger behind me.
I was going to say that hanger's like sticking out of the side of your head.
Genuinely psychotic. Actually, this says a lot about who I am as a person.
Your real life, right?
I'll put the hanger away though. But we'll leave the unfolded sweaters.
Falling out of the thing there. No, they're like, my mom was like kind of, you picture like a ex-hippie, like really lax, like pretty laid back. And she was in charge of the parenting. So very, like I've never been grounded. My mom thought it taught you to hold a grudge. Like nothing. Yeah, that was her belief. And I'm like, okay. But I was a really good kid because there was a lot of like mutual respect. I didn't want to make her not, I didn't want to make her, I don't know what the word is, just not proud of me or something like that. So I really.
And as a former hippie, was the conversation very open about dating, bodies, periods, sex, all
Yes.
that stuff.
Everything. Like before I had my period, she was showing me all the options. This is how you get pregnant. This is how you don't get pregnant. Yeah, she was very open about all of that. Like she was pretty, like a foundation in love and caring for somebody, but not, oh my goodness, we're not going to have like a purity ring in this house. Like that's just not how I was raised. Like it's unrealistic. And she kind of raised me to be, she's like, I know we're all human. This isn't something I want to talk about, but this is a human need, and I want to talk about it before you get yourself in trouble.
Okay, love it.
Yeah.
Now, when you go to tell mom, I'm going to be a child bride. I want to get married. Is she into it or not into it?
So, it's when you say it like that,
Just kidding.
at the time, it didn't feel like that because I was graduating college. So I was 21, but I'd been in school for 4 years. So, like, I kind of felt
You were mature.
like I'd already done all the college stuff. Like, we were moving. I was going to go to grad school in a different state in Virginia. I went to UVA from Michigan. And for him to come with me, like, that would have been weird if we weren't married, especially like his parents are very. So that wouldn't have really been an option. So it's not like we were forced into it, but it's what we both wanted. But it was just the natural next step. Like that's just kind of the progression. Like, So yeah.
And obviously, we have to talk about before we get to this next chapter of marriage. What was your eating like when you were growing up?
So my eating was a lot like my dad's eating, who was probably worse than I was. Maybe he was really, really selective. And I mean, he was older, obviously the generation above me, but even for that, he was like an older dad a little bit. So he grew up in a time of like very strict, you finish your plate or, a lot of punishment and things like that. So, he had an understanding of how I was. And so he was pretty sympathetic towards it. Like I didn't want a lot of, so like condiments for me are really hard, sauces are really hard. I almost always modify the menu, things like that. And he would do the same thing. So he very much understood. My mom was way more adventurous with eating, unless it's fish. But she was way more adventurous with eating. But since she kind of was that hippy dippy mindset, she like kind of accommodated me a lot and just kind of let me, oh my gosh, well, Kelly doesn't like that, no big deal. So them together were probably not the best role models for me eating. But on the other side, I didn't have any pressure or anything, which sometimes helps and sometimes.
Oh, interesting. Because I feel like now, and we'll get to down the line, I want to talk about solid starts and some of these like things that I think might be fucking people up, but we'll get to that.
Yes.
Okay, so you're a selective eater. Do you have any sense now that I'm sure you've reflected on your own journey, where your selective eating was coming from?
So I've thought about that a lot. And when I was growing up as a younger person, like a school age child, I also had a lot of anxiety. I did have a lot of OCD, and I think I don't anymore. It's all been, I never say it fully goes away, but it's completely under control. So a lot of mine stemmed from kind of my OCD and just routines around things. Mine was a lot, okay, if I eat this food, then this bad might happen, or something along the OCD lines. And it just was very embedded in anxiety. And then trying anything new also made me very, very anxious. I never had a fear of like throwing up or anything. Nobody likes it. Like, I get it. But there are people who have huge fears of it. Mine was more just such a strong disgust of foods and not being willing or open or knowing how to take baby steps to try those things. I know how to do that now, but at the time I was so engulfed with my anxiety, there was just no way I would have been able to do it.
And how was that for you in social situations with your peers?
Oh, horrible. And what was worse really were like sleepovers or summer camps, like things like that. Like I could control a lot of it during the day, but it was after that, it was like nighttime, so it were really, really hard. And I hid so many things like that, even from my mom. Like I remember I finally broke down when I was like 17 and I was like, I need help, like just crying on the laundry room floor, like, and I told her everything I'd been doing for like 10, 15 years, and she didn't know, since I was basically 6. And so whenever I do meet with families and I ask a lot of questions like you do when you evaluate kids, a lot of times parents are like, oh, no, they don't have this or they don't have that. And it always like tings in my brain like, well, my mom wouldn't have known either. And we were really close. And so kids are good at hiding stuff and they're good at masking.
I think about that all the time. We recently did like a self-assessment or a parental assessment for one of our kids for something. And I felt so much pressure because I'm like, I don't know if I know the real answers to these
Right?
questions.
Right. You think you might know, but like it's hard. Like kids are like I was so good at whether you want to call it masking or hiding or just modifying, and I was a pro, and kids are good
Kids are
at
good.
it.
Okay, so when you go into speech pathology, did you have any idea that this world existed?
No, 100% no. So you kind of get like, you think of like speech, you get all the foundation of developmental speech and speech delay and kids that aren't talking and articulation disorders and all that stuff. But you take like one class basically in swallowing and learning how to tell if somebody's aspirating or not, which is like the physics of swallowing, not necessarily like behavioral feeding or eating.
Okay, so the food stuff comes later for you in term professionally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Now in the backdrop, we have graduated. You clearly in a serious relationship by the time you graduate college.
Yeah.
Did you guys meet in college?
High school.
My God, we've got a high school. You know what? When you're with a high school sweetheart, because my brother also married his high school sweetheart, I feel like the age that you get married is younger than the general population because you've just
Yes.
been together longer.
That's what I was saying when you said child bride, whatever. Like, but we'd already been together, like, I don't know, since we were like 16. So it's like 5 years already. I mean, it was just a long time.
So you go to UVA. So you finish, and what's the game plan?
So we finished, and my ex-husband loved Disney World. So he's like, you can get a job anywhere. So that's why we got a job. I got a job in Florida, in Orlando. So that's why I'm here.
To be near Disneyland. To go to Disneyland.
Yeah.
Just for,
He really liked it.
for funsies, just to go.
For fun. No kids. Just, yeah, I don't know if you know this is a side note, but there's a whole group of like Disney adults.
Yes.
So I am, so that was one, so I am not.
Guys, the writing's on the wall right there.
I went along with it for a little while.
Kelly, actually, this is a good point you bring up. Every Disney adult I know is with another Disney adult.
Yes, that might have been the crux of the break in the foundation. And then he just kind of grew one way and I grew another way, and instead of like maybe your brother that's with his high school sweetheart like grew together, we grew up like just apart.
He grew into Mickey Mouse
ears. Right, and I grew into like I want something different in life.
It's not a small world after all.
It's not. It's huge and I really want to explore it. So that could be a problem.
I love it.
Well, and also Disney's really expensive.
Yeah.
So we would do like weekends there, and I'm like, okay, I could have gone to a whole new state or country for this price.
And instead I'm at Epcot.
And it's hot. Really hot.
It's really hot. Okay, so that's why we moved to Orlando. We've got a fresh start, but it takes you a long time to actually have kids.
Yeah, we didn't want any, so we waited purposely. I mean, I'll be really honest. Like, at that point, I felt young. I'm like 23. Like, no way. So we decided, I think, 29 or 30, and it took about like 9 months, and then I got pregnant.
Now, did you know that you wanted to be a mom?
Yeah, that was always the plan.
That was always the plan. So I feel like there's this distinction between people who were like, okay, of course I'll have kids. Everyone has kids. And people are like, I was born to be a mother.
I don't think I'm the second one. I think I'm the first one. I want them. I've always wanted kids, but I still like wanted my career and wanted to work and like wanted a family. I like all that part, but I'm not like cut out to, like, I know I have some friends who have 3 and 4 kids and they're a stay-at-home mom with their kids. I'm like, I don't know how you do that. Like, cheers to you. That's very hard.
Yes, it's a very, people, it is their calling and their profession and they're amazing at it. And then there's me. Couldn't do it.
Yep.
Couldn't be me.
I couldn't. And I have one of my other really good friends. She never wants kids, and I don't judge her or criticize her for it at all. But that was never me either. I did want.
You wanted both.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is that you have charted out on a career where you spend a lot of time with other people's kids.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which sometimes it's kind of hard, like leaving my kids to go help other kids.
Yeah. And like you also have to have the patience of a saint.
You do. Yeah. It's easier to be patient with other people's kids, I've learned.
Yeah, because they're not pushing your trigger buttons. Only your kids can do that.
Yes. Your kids have a special way to push, and you're not with them all the time. Like it's just a different relationship.
Totally. Okay, so you have your daughter and you're like 30-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And was the motherhood experience becoming a mom shocking? Exactly what you thought it would be?
It was what I thought it would be. It was a little bit more her sleeping was terrible, so I think I underestimated the sleep deprivation and the difficulty with the sleeping. But other than that, yeah, the love part, and I didn't go into it with rose-colored glasses. I knew there was going to be hard parts and fun parts. Like I'd already worked with a lot of kids too. I knew there was risks with everything. So, except for the sleep part, I pretty much was like, like I went into it with like very eyes wide open.
Now, let's say whatever, it's 6 months, 9 months, whenever, it's time to introduce your daughter to food. What's that experience like for you?
So back then, so this was now almost 18 years ago. So I really got into feeding around 15-ish years ago. So I didn't have as much knowledge. And baby-led weaning is kind of like a lot of people love that, did that. I really went the way more traditional route of, cool, she's going to do some puree, she's going to do some food that looks interesting. One thing that was really hard for me is, the idea of like pureed meats it makes me just want to vomit. And, I don't know if that stems from all my aversions, because like I said, I have a lot of weird feeding.
No, I feel like that's a universal.
It's just, I don't know why we do that to our kids. Like, I just can't imagine, like, why would I feed my little baby that I love something that is so repulsive to me, right? So that was really hard, like so I never did things like that. Even like pureeing my meats, like I could teach her how to chew, so I'd make it really, really small and I'd put it here on her molars and make sure she was safe, but I never did any of the pureed meats and stuff like that. That just wasn't something that she was going to be exposed to through me.
Respect. And okay, 18, you got into it 15. So what happens when she's around age 3 that your light bulb goes off that there's this whole feeding world?
So I was working with kids, and I also would do some side gigging at hospitals where we did swallow studies. So I was really good at the medical part, like knowing if you're swallowing correctly, all that stuff. And then I started working at a children's hospital that opened in my town, and which was a really cool experience to open a new hospital. Like, I didn't think I'd ever have that opportunity. It was so cool. And I was one of 2 speech, and I was like the feeding one because I could do the swallow studies, which I was great at. I'm like, give them to me, give me the babies, give me the kids. Like, I can tell you if they're safe or not. And then since I was like the feeding one, I started getting these kids that were like refusing to eat. I was like, what the fuck? I don't know what to do with you. Like, you don't want to eat. You're not going to eat for mom. You're probably not going to eat for me. So I started taking all these classes, all these courses. I mean, I spent probably like 2 or 3 years just learning how to do, developmental feeding and feeding refusal and what happens if your kid, hides under the table and new food aversion and all that. Just literally all this feeding stuff. And then I started getting kids on my caseload that were like teenagers, and the parents were like, I don't know, they're not interested in eating. And I'm like, well, what do you want me to do about that? And like, this is who ended up on my caseload. So then I started learning all about anxiety and eating and really relating myself to them because I went through a lot of that. And then I started taking a lot of courses that I didn't get credits for, but it was more like in the mental health world, like the anxiety world. because I needed to learn I don't treat anxiety, but I need to have an understanding of it, what it feels like. And it really resonated with me just because of my history as well. And then we created a feeding team. So there was like an OT, speech, GI, dietitian. So I was able to do everything with the OT and learn like the sensory aspect of feeding. And we did just session after session, and it was all together. So it wasn't like speech only did oral, motor, or chewing, and OT did sensory. We just, whatever kid came through, we were going to learn each other's. And then we hired a doctor, a doctor of psychology, and she had specialized in feeding disorders like ARFID. So then she came on our team. So then I did millions of sessions with her, and that's how I really got all my skills training with ARFID.
Did ARFID exist when you were a kid?
Not when I was a kid. Mm-mm. No, not when I was a kid. Like, they never would have diagnosed me with that. It really didn't come until, like, which sounds now like 2010-ish, like 15-ish years ago. So, yeah.
And, well, first of all, that sounds like an extremely cool experience.
It was awesome. And it was for about 7-ish years. So there was just a lot that we learned. And even from the GI doctor, just all the medical parts that go into feeding, and just, like, it's just fascinating.
Can I ask you a semantic question? What's the difference between a feeding disorder and an eating disorder?
So an eating disorder is in the realm of the mental health disorders like anorexia, bulimia, ARFID. It is considered an eating disorder. A feeding disorder is considered like, I can't chew this food, I can't swallow it, like oral motor difficulties, maybe aspiration, choking on food. That's like a feeding disorder. The eating disorder is the mental part. So mentally, I have body dysmorphia. Mentally, I'm scared of this new food. So that's kind of why they are
related.
Sure we use them interchangeably, but that's really where it like stems from.
Okay. Okay, so let's get into the ARFID, selective eating, extreme picky eating, whatever. There's so many words and they're not all the same thing, which is important to say.
They're not.
Do you feel like this phenomenon is new in some ways, or is it always been there and just massively underdiagnosed?
I think it's been there, and I think it's been massively underdiagnosed. But I think there's also such a shift in our parenting styles over the past like 2 decades of, like gentle parenting versus like overbearing parenting. And I think that's brought to light, like, how do we best help these kids? Like, there's not a lot of research and evidence base behind a lot of our methods either. So that's a big problem. And so since, if you have somebody who's very critical of gentle parenting and they're kind of like, you just let them eat what they want, then these parents are kind of saying, but you don't understand, they literally will not eat anything. And there's kind of like this whole social like fight about it. And I feel like one side really has a hard time understanding the other. And there's really not a lot of like middle ground. And I think that's what we're missing a lot of the time.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I've noticed when I talk to people who are not American, who are from like Latin America or sub-Saharan Africa or whatever, this phenomenon of selective eating is confusing for them.
Very much so. And there's a whole book about that, like French children aren't picky, right? Because they're just literally expected to eat what they're given from day one when they're able to eat, post like breastfeeding or bottle feeding. And there aren't such things as like kids menus. Like, that's not a thing, right? So you don't even have the option of, well, kids eat chicken nuggets and fries and then parents eat all the other stuff. So there is something to be said, but there are like some studies of even kids like in Asian cultures. So like when you talk to those parents, they'll be like, well, picky kids over there, they still eat rice, it's just plain white. Or kids like in Hispanic cultures, like, yeah, my kid is really picky, they just eat like the chips when we have dinners a lot, or rice but no beans, no meat, something like that. So, I think it's sometimes doesn't seem as prevalent, but I don't know if it's just not talked about as much, or that could be part of it. There's even there's this book, I have it in the other room. It's called Picky. It's super interesting. And this author wrote about food like in the US, like centuries, like since like the 1800s and things like that. that our kids, that the kids then just, they were like delicacies, and our kids would like never touch like bone marrow and like meat stuff. And that was here in the US because there was nothing processed or anything else available. Like kids would get excited when you'd get like, they'd grow asparagus and they'd be like, oh my gosh, it's such a treat. And like I can imagine our kids like love it, wanting to eat asparagus. So I think part of it is what kids are exposed to and what is available, but there are just some underlying disorders that are really, really hard also, and those kids might have starved back in the day. I don't know.
Now, how familiar are you with solid starts?
I am familiar with solid starts. What's your opinion on solid starts?
I'm going to tell you my solid start story. And I've written a blog piece on this called My Dear John Letter to Solid Starts.
Okay.
I became a mom in COVID for the first time. So I don't have a peer group.
Scary time anyway.
Scary time. I don't have a peer group to observe in the world when I'm learning to feed my child. I have Instagram. And I see this woman. She has this really scary story of her son, Charlie, who she talks about a lot. Mm-hmm. And I'm terrified of my kid becoming a picky or severely picky eater. And I love food. I'm like your mom, very adventurous foodie. I had dreams, fantasized about taking my kid to the French bistro and sharing an escargot. So
that's a lofty dream in my world.
So I did everything Solid Start said. Giving my 6-month-old the sardines, baby-led weaning, never a puree in sight, and he ate it all. Great. He was a great eater. I never exposed him to macaroni and cheese. Never exposed him to eating a sandwich. Never exposed him to just normal everyday food that I actually eat in my normal life. So then when it came to eat those things, he was terrified of those things. So annoying.
Oh my goodness. Challenging.
And also I had great anxiety over any time he didn't want to try something. Okay. And normal people sometimes don't like everything. It's normal to be like, I'm not into this, I'm not into that.
I want to try it. It's totally normal.
So it created, and like whatever, this isn't their fault, this is on me.
No, of course.
But it created a real sense of fear and anxiety in me around feeding my kid. I was putting way too much energy, focus, attention, and I think kids can feel that. Like I wasn't saying like, do you like it? Do you like it? Isn't it so fun to eat food? But I was staring at him.
Like, what's his reaction going to be?
I wasn't making him finish everything on his plate. But you bet your ass I was watching to see how much he ate of every single thing.
And they're perceptive. We already established kids are very smart.
So this is a long way of saying that there's a real danger to the lack of nuance on the internet.
Yes.
That a scary story about a kid with an extreme situation makes you think that if you do one wrong thing, you're going to get the extreme situation. Just not a good place to be. So that's my long answer to what I think about Solid Starts. And there are other baby-led weaning resources that I think are wonderful and did not wage psychological warfare on me the same way that they did.
I think it's interesting you said that about that your anxiety went up. When we do a lot of feeding therapy, everybody focuses so much on the kid, but a lot of what we do here is trying to help the parents' anxiety because it's a real thing and it can spiral and it can have such a negative effect on your kid. And it's a big, big part. Sometimes the anxiety, like if you're trying to like introduce a new food and you know that food's really hard for that child, a lot of times the parents, you'll hear them even say like, but they're going to lose a safe food or they might miss a meal. Like you can hear the anxiety, like that's like the end of the world, like a level 10. And so a lot of what we do is have to help parents out of their own anxiety before we can even help the kids.
Yes, that's me. I am the parent in question. And I've gotten much better, but it also can create real tension in a relationship and my husband and I think have learned a lot collectively, but when one person grew up being like, you're going to finish everything on your plate, or you don't get to say no to eating that or whatever, it's really hard to understand if your kid is scared.
It is. It's very hard to put yourself in their shoes, because if it was something like, hey, even if you weren't, I was like, Carrie, I'm really afraid of snakes. Like, you could understand that even if you weren't. Like, you can totally relate. When it's like pizza, you're like, Kelly, that is so ridiculous. Like, you cannot be afraid of food. Like, so I think that that's where the misconception is all the time. It's very hard to understand.
We are currently navigating, I mentioned this to you a little bit on the phone, like whether or not how selective our son is, and he's gotten a little bit better and whatever. But yesterday I was reading them a book about feelings.
Okay.
And we get to the anxiety page. And I was like, and after each page, I'm like, guys, give me an example of when you feel joyful. When do you feel, oh no, it's disgust. Disgust.
Oh, that's people, like I talk about this all the time. They overlook disgust so much, and it's such a big deal.
Huge. So we get to the disgust page, and I'm like, give me an example of a time you feel disgusted. And my daughter says something like, when somebody does a stinky poop. Like, great.
Okay.
He says every night at dinner.
Well, that's eye-opening, don't you think?
Hugely. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? What about dinner is disgusting? He's like, well, what you and my sister and daddy, what you guys eat is disgusting. I'm like, every night it's disgusting? He's like, yes. Okay, well, what about it is disgusting? How it looks, how it smells. It's disgusting. It's like, okay. Thank you for that input. And sometimes he will go sit on the kitchen island instead of sitting with us. And I'm like, the other day, I don't know, he was like, I think I want to try a banana. And he bit it into it and he choked it down. And he was like, it's really good. And I'm like, I can clearly tell that it's not.
You don't feel that way. Yes.
I don't think you do like it. But he wanted to like it.
Yeah. But you could tell.
So walk me through what it's like when you get a new, let's go with somebody sort of around my son's age, 6, 7, 8, who can talk, who can, babies and younger kids, I feel like are a little bit harder. So like a young kid, what's precipitating them showing up in your office?
So usually an extreme exhaustion by parents of, I cannot feed my kid. Or a lot of times, like even around now, is like, oh my gosh, back to school, like they're not going to eat all day, right? Like I don't know what to pack in their lunchbox. That's usually a big one, right? Or that a doctor is like, okay, I understand. Like after the parents have said many times, even though they're on the growth chart, they're like, yeah, but I'm supplementing with them, or I'm afraid to leave the country with my kid because I know McDonald's is going to taste different in France. So that usually precipitates a lot of it, just being so frustrated and not wanting to like control your life anymore. Because when you have babies, they do control your life, right? Because you have to just make so many changes to your life to even just leave the house. But you want that to be resolved by like 6-ish.
Yeah.
Like they should just be like kind of, they still have some big emotions and they still might not last as long as you if you're, but the food part shouldn't be something that's so restrictive. So that's usually when parents like, the little ones reach out when they're not progressing off the bottle. The teenagers reach out when they're like about to go to college, or the kids then say, oh my gosh, I want help. The ones that are like your son's age, it's usually the parents that are like
fucking fed up.
My God. Yeah. And parents often are fighting about it, or maybe parents are on the same page, but like the kid spends a lot of time with grandma and grandma has a whole different attitude and vibe about what should happen. So it's just, it is exhausting.
And so you do this long intake where you're understanding what does food look like, what does the home life look like, or whatever. And then what happens? I know you do hypnosis with them. Or sometimes.
Sometimes those that's yeah, only if it's the right approach. So that would be only for like a kiddo who's older, much older, like teenager or older. And they have to really, really want to change, almost like you're flipping a switch. If so, the way we think of it too is like there's a lot of people who are like, yeah, my kid wants to change, but just recognizing that they'd like to eat differently or like to be healthier or whatever the goal is, being willing to do the steps in between is where they have to be. So if you're like, say you're overweight, there's going to be a point in your life where you're like, I'm not overweight, I'm totally fine, leave me alone, like, right? So that's, you're not ready to change at all. Then there's like a step where you're like, okay, I recognize I'm at risk for diabetes or whatever, I know I need to change. So you're recognizing you need to change, but I'm still not ready to take the steps. They're still not ready for something like hypnosis, and that's where most of our kids are. They recognize they'd like things to be different, but they're just not ready to do the work. Then you have the kids that are like, I really want to be different, but I'm stuck, I don't know how, please help me to change. That's the people we use hypnosis for, and it's like it's well under 20% of the kids I see.
Okay, so now tell me, with a 6-year-old, what are the tactics, what are the tools?
So usually we want to figure out what he is enjoying about food. So if there is anything, which I'll be honest, I have some kids that are like, I don't like eating ever. I literally do it like medicine just because I know I have to stay alive. So we want to figure out if there is any joy in eating for him and try to build from there. So I usually do some type of feeding hierarchy. So, okay, here's what you're already eating. What could we maybe start just changing a little? I know you won't like it as much, but can we just handle being a little bit uncomfortable with your chicken nugget cut this way instead of that? Or, cool, I know you do fries all the time. We're going to do Chick-fil-A fries because they're the different kind. I know you don't like it as much, and I know you're uncomfortable, but instead of avoiding, can you handle the discomfort? So really the crux of like any good feeding therapy program isn't just new foods and trying and whatever. That's probably what you're doing at home. It's kind of teaching your kids, I know this is really uncomfortable for you, but you can handle the discomfort. And like not a level 10 discomfort, like a level 3. And like that wasn't what was done for me. Not in a bad way, not like I blame my parents. They were not the kind that you're like, oh my gosh, sit here for 3 hours and eat. They're just like, no big deal. They didn't teach me that like, hey, I know this is uncomfortable for you, but you can handle the discomfort. I wasn't taught that. And so I never could handle the discomfort of anything. And that's why my anxiety grew so strong, and my OCD got really bad. So that's what we really try to teach kids, sometimes it's not even feeding related. We sometimes work on accommodations or targets that are not feeding related to help with some of the anxiety.
Interesting. Like if somebody's just less anxious in general, then food's going to be less of a thing.
And I don't work directly one-on-one with the kiddos. We work with the parents on reducing their accommodations and kind of like picking targets that are really helpful to, like, say your kid is, you have to still go down to them to the bathroom every single night because they're afraid to go in the bathroom by themselves, which are a lot of 6-year-olds, right? So teaching you kind of how to reduce that accommodation and make it so they still don't fall that meltdown and can't handle it.
Sounds really tiring.
Totally.
Now, when does your next love enter this picture of your life?
Oh my, okay.
Your
so
final love.
So I got divorced when I was like 31. When my daughter was like, legal when she was like 2-ish, whatever. I dated for many years. I had a fun time. And then,
as you should.
And that 6 years, that was like the only time in my life I'd actually been single and, on my own, not answering to anybody. And then I met my husband when I was like 37, 38. And both of us, the first phone conversation is, we're never getting married. I don't want to marry, and I don't want to ever have more kids. And now we're married with a son. So life changes.
LOL.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your son enters the picture. How old is he now? 8? 6. Oh yeah. You're okay. 6.5. You get it. So 6.5. Did you do anything differently food-wise with him than you did with your daughter?
1,000,000%. Yes. Yeah. Because I knew a lot more. So I still didn't do like a strict baby-led weaning. I don't love like pureed food, but he had some because, if he's eating, I like the naturally pureed foods better, like yogurt, something like that. Like I didn't Don't do a lot of
Applesauce.
that. Yeah.
It's
But
not
he
that.
still, yeah, applesauce. It's not that gross, right? And he did pouches. Like, he didn't love them, but he would do them. Like, I'm fine with them. They're like anti-pouch people and just, ugh. But whatever he was interested in, we were able to do. And then, yeah, I did. I would, when he would give like pushback, because he ate everything before he was like 2, like all babies, like most kids. And then he started it too, like starting like investigating his food, like what's on here. So I use all the techniques I use in feeding therapy to really help him like still be able to allow it on his plate, even if it's just allowing it there and not avoiding. So it wasn't like I was force feeding him at all. I just made sure that whatever I was having, he also had like small portion of it on his plate, even if he was just barely interacting with it.
Isn't it crazy the wild opinions people have about everything? Like, people are really
Everything.
passionate about what other people are
Yes.
doing with their kids.
It's so polarizing, and I don't know if people really are or if people just post that on social media to get likes and attention.
Like, people get really
I don't
mad
know.
about eating.
And there's a million ways to do it correctly. Like, whatever is working for your family too, I feel like that works. Like, I don't know. Like, I still, like, my son still, he has pasta with just butter. He's like anti-red sauce right now for some reason. It's not the end of the world. Like, I still work on it with him, but it's not like the focus.
You're not like
everything.
waking up in the middle of the night being like, the marinara.
Exactly. Oh my God. Your life is just never going to be full because you can't do red sauce and pasta.
But that actually reminds me of a question I was going to ask you. How long is a phase?
Well, that's a really good question. So usually, around 2, kids start getting picky-ish. By 3, they should, like, some of those barriers should be broken down, and they shouldn't be, they'll still have like strong likes and dislikes, obviously. But where I think it gets more red flaggy, even though I don't like red flag word, but where it gets more worrisome is like when they're like, I only do McDonald's nuggets, and you're like going to McDonald's like every day for them. Like, that's something that I would say maybe we're not going to do that. Or they like will literally do like a hamburger but from like one restaurant, like you have to go to Red Robin or whatever it is. So I feel like when it gets like that, or like I can't travel anywhere, that's when you're like, okay, this is not the most typical, I need some help.
We recently went on a family trip, and as you can surmise from all this, my son is still pretty selective. And I was like, okay, buddy, we're going on this vacation. We got to practice eating food that we know will be at every restaurant. Like, every
Right.
restaurant will
Perfect.
have probably a children's menu or something adjacent.
Mhm.
So you need to practice eating a grilled cheese sandwich, like, which he would refuse to eat. I'm like, I don't care if you lick it, you whatever, but we're going to practice. And so then when we got on the trip, he still wasn't this like amazing eater, but he also didn't freak out at the restaurant.
Yes, and that's what you want.
I gave him a choice of 5 things, and I was like, you have to pick 2 to practice for like the 3 weeks leading up to the trip.
That's a great idea. That's what we do, like practice eating.
Well, I wanted to see, was I scarring him by having him do this, or is that fine?
No, that's great. And like I tell them too, because especially kids like your son, obviously I don't know him, but those disgust ones, like they'll have it on new food and they're just like, yuck, I don't like it. Like immediately, right? Immediately. And you're just like, you just want to be like, so what we try to do is teach them some other language to use. Like one we use a lot is like, okay, I don't know if I like it. I've never tried it. So language helps a lot. Or I always tell them, like, most kids are like playing some type of sport, like less are doing music, unfortunately, because I like music. But so, if he's like doing soccer, like I always kind of say, well, like you go to soccer practice all the time, you're like practicing to get better with this like grilled cheese. I don't know if I like it yet, I'm practicing it, or like I'm learning to like it. Instead of like just getting that out of their head, like the yuck, they're just, when they see it and they have that disgust, it's like, I'm not ready for it, I'm learning to like it. And that's really, really helpful, I found, in a lot of our sessions, even though it sounds kind of
Like cognitive, no, it's like, what is that, dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT?
like, yes, to try to like almost like talking yourself into it. Because if you're thinking immediately it's disgusting, they're thinking that. If then we verbalize it, then we like give it more power.
Totally.
So we're trying to not do
Okay,
that.
I like that. I'm going to remember that one. Now, I want to talk about your large age gap of kids.
Oh, yeah.
Look, she lights up For people who are listening, she literally just lit up like 100-watt smile.
I never thought that would be the case. So it's just like blows my mind even still thinking
What
about
has
it now.
this experience been like for you?
Pretty crazy. Physically, my body didn't go back like it did when I was 30 as it did when I was 41. So that was hard. Mentally, that was harder too, for sure, especially being in like a newer marriage and like.
And like,
you know,
Kelly, I hope this isn't appropriate to say. It kind of is, but whatever. You're a fox. You are. You're a stone cold fox.
That's really
It's a
sweet.
fact. So I could imagine.
Well, at that time,
you're like not feeling that foxy.
Yeah, no, not that foxy. And so that part was different. And then, you know, I was in a different financial place too, which was a little bit better, easier. My husband was more supportive financially than my previous life. So that was helpful. I was kind of doing my own thing, so that was kind of scary financially. And then just emotionally, kind of like, I don't know how old you
40.
are. 40. Okay. So you might not, I was really scared. Like, I'm going to go to preschool and I'm going to be this old ass mom with like these 22-year-olds. Like, I was just, because it's typical for I guess not 22, which there were, but like a lot of 25-ish-year-olds have 3-year-olds.
That's your fault,
right?
for Florida.
So
here in California, everyone at preschool is my age.
Okay, that would be much better. Much better. Here, it's like, oh my gosh. And I was just like, but even in my like mom group now, most of the people in there are between like 36 and 43-ish. So I'm older, but I think I fit in fine. Like, they don't know my age. Well, they'll know now,
Busted.
But they don't really know my age. It's hard because I have an 18-year-old daughter. So you kind of can at least assume I'm a certain age. So.
And how do the kids get along with each other?
So it's great. Like, I think it maybe helped that the daughter was the older one. Like, she's watched him a lot. The hardest part is traveling because they don't enjoy the same things. So that part is very hard. Like, figuring out. Like, we went to Gatlinburg this past winter, and that was fun.
What's Gatlinburg?
It's like the mountains in Tennessee.
Oh, amazing!
Like, we did like a cabin. Yeah, it was super fun. And yeah, and so they both. And then we did a cruise. They both enjoyed that, but still hard even on the cruise because my son didn't want to go to the kids club, and my daughter wanted to do the teen club, and like it was just still hard. So that's the hardest part. But
I mean, there's a gulf between them right now, age-wise, in terms of just where they are in their lives.
Oh yeah, yes. He just realized she's leaving for college, and he like started crying. He's like, "What do you mean she's moving out?" I'm like, "Well, she's gonna go live somewhere else," and like he didn't understand.
That's a big change for him. And you just lost your babysitter.
I know, right? She's watching him. We're going to Boston next weekend, and she's gonna watch him. But now she's gonna be away. And she was also even not our babysitter, like just our backup. Like in case something happened, she was kind of always there. But
I love an large age gap. I just feel like right now my nephew's staying with us from Florida, who's 14, and he's so helpful.
It's so nice. They get helpful.
Like,
they do.
So really what's your parenting style?
So I'm pretty laid back like my mom was. I'm very open, especially with my daughter, about everything as she went through all her teenage craziness. Oh my gosh, not fun. But I am a little bit more like, I do understand where, like my son is just more anxious in general. And I do understand that I can't just not really allow him, but I can't let him to like sit in that fear. So if he is showing signs of any type of anxiety, I do want him to understand he can handle being uncomfortable and I don't always have to be there. So that's really, really important to me because I've seen how it's escalated in like teenagers and it's really hard to undo that cycle.
Are there any little like tricks that you give him to help navigate that?
Yeah, we do. I tell him all the time, and you've probably heard this, but when he starts kind of escalating, and feels like he can't do something that I know he can do, we tell him all the time, you can do hard things. You can totally do hard things. And I think that our kids really need to hear that. And they need to have our support, but not so much that they feel like they can't handle it. So it's like they're looking to you to be like, you're totally fine. And if we don't show them that, it's like when there's like turbulence on an airplane, and then you hear like the captain come on and say like, we're going through some turbulence, I'm fine, everything's fine. You totally relax. But until you hear that, then you're like looking to that kind of figure for that kind of reassurance. But you just should have to hear it once, right? So that's kind of what our kids are looking to us for. Like they fall and you don't freak out. You're like, you're totally fine. I'm going to give you that reassurance and get up and walk again. We're going to continue eating. We're going to leave the house without me carrying you, whatever it is.
Love it. Kelly, I could talk to you all day. There are a million questions and things. I'm going to put a link to Picky in the show notes, which is the book you mentioned, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously, I want to put a link to your practice. Can people see you virtually?
Yep. I see people virtually, and then I have 2 courses for sale. I have one that focuses on anxiety and helping parents work through all that anxiety and reduce their accommodations. That's the space training we were talking about. And then I have a new course coming out called Taste. And that one is really helping for you to see like inside feeding therapy sessions, see what we do when kids melt down, see what we do when we are faced with really hard things. And it has a lot of resources and materials in there.
My last question for you is, I know that we have a lot of listeners who are worried in some way about their kids eating. I know because I'm friends with these guys, these people who listen. What would you say to them? A, when should they be seeking professional help? And B, how do we calm them down?
So we know when you are feeling like, I can't handle this anymore. Even like, I think one thing parents think a lot is, well, I tell my doctor all the time, but my doctor just tells me they're fine. But you have that mom instinct that's saying, but this isn't right. Like, I'm giving them Pediasure 3 times a day, or like he can't go to a sleepover. Like when it's affecting your life is when you have to get, right? You can obviously see it if your child is too small, or maybe they do blood work and there's a nutritional deficit. Of course you get help. But the social aspect, like my kid is afraid to go to summer camp because they can't eat, right? That's when you need to seek help for sure. And then the second part, what was your second
How do
question?
we calm these people down?
Oh my goodness, right? So there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Like I'm living proof, right? That I was in a really bad eating place, and not because of anorexia or anything that you think of as traditional eating disorders. It was really because of this kind of rule-based routines with eating. And I was able to get out, but it takes a long time. And it's a conjoined effort from the parents learning things and the kids learning. And if we can kind of understand that it does take a while, but there is light at the end of the tunnel if you get the right help, then I want parents to understand there is resources and there is help out there.
Thanks, Kelly. This was so much fun. Team, I need your help. If you love it here, please like and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Subscribe to the Substack for full access to this episode's show notes and join the discussion. And of course, follow me on Instagram at mutha, mutha.life, for a daily look at all things mother. Thanks for listening. Be sure to tune in next week for another Chat in the Closet. This podcast was produced by Mother Life, music by Ronan Landa. See you next time.